Welcome back to the podcast, Abby's Analysis. In today's episode, James Gatz to Jay Gatsby. I'm your host, Abby, and today we're diving into The Famous Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. This modernistic American novel came out in 1925, right after World War I, during the Roaring Twenties, a time of fast money, crazy parties, and the new hope that anyone could reinvent themselves and chase this perfect life called the American dream. But instead of creating an unrealistic fairy tale with a wholesome, happy ending, Fitzgerald questions whether the dream is actually real or if it's all just an illusion. Today we're using the 2023 Set 1 FRQ question as our guide of the episode, which asks us to take a deeper look at a character who intentionally reinvents himself, people who might want to separate from their past, join a new community, or create a version of themselves that feels more authentic. Where Gatsby is the perfect example, as he literally and figuratively leaves behind James Gatz, a poor kid from North Dakota, and becomes Jay Gatsby, this mysterious rich guy with the massive mansion and famous parties, all in hopes of winning his one true love, Daisy, and living the life he's always dreamed of. But as amazing as this story is, and as much as I'm sure you'd love to hear more about this book itself, what's really amazing about it is how Fitzgerald shows us Gatsby's reinvention without just telling us. He uses literary techniques such as symbolism, imagery, and first-person narration through Nick to get us, the reader, thinking about the illusion of the American dream and how truly fragile an identity as carefully constructed as Gatsby's can be. And that's what we will be breaking down today. One of the clearest ways Fitzgerald shows Gatsby's reinvention is through his use of imagery. He doesn't just simply say, Gatsby is rich. He uses descriptive language to make you see it. For example, in as early as chapter 1 of the book, he describes Gatsby's house as a cheerful red and white Georgian colonial mansion overlooking the bay, Fitzgerald 5. Making you immediately picture this huge, over-the-top house where it's not just a home. It's almost like a stage where Gatsby performs the new identity he wants the world to see. Everything about this mansion is meant to impress people, to show he belongs to the wealthy, glamorous world he's fighting for. Then there are also the famous parties, which are all full of imagery that makes you feel the excitement and energy in the room. Fitzgerald writes that people move like moss among the whispering and champagne and the stars, Fitzgerald 39. Even in just the small sentence, you can visualize the crowd mingling and moving around the room person to person. But also imagining that there is a sense that no one actually is connecting on a personal level at these parties. And much like his fake identity, it's all surface level, meant to impress. Fitzgerald uses this to show that Gatsby isn't throwing parties for himself. He's performing, creating a version of himself he wants the world to see. This imagery makes us, the reader, think about the difference between appearance and reality. We notice how constructed his identity is, and we start to question how much of the American dream is real versus how much is just a performance and illusion. Using what we see and hear to make the reader stop to reflect on why Gatsby does what he does. Another big technique used constantly throughout the novel is first-person narration through Nick Carraway. Nick isn't just a narrator, he's our direct lens into Gatsby's life. And through him, Fitzgerald shows both admiration and doubt at the same time. For example, in chapter 1 of the novel, Nick admits that there was something gorgeous about him, Fitzgerald 2, which shows us how Gatsby's hope and determination might be seen as inspiring at first, not just fake. Because we see Gatsby through Nick's eyes, this causes the reader to almost want to believe him too. But as the book continues in chapter 6, Nick also starts to notice how fragile Gatsby's identity is. He explains that Gatsby talked a lot about his past, as if he wanted to recover something. Fitzgerald 111. This shifts the tone from admiration to concern, showing that Gatsby's whole reinvention seemed to all depend on trying to create a moment that has already been long gone. This line helps lead into the bigger question of the novel, pushing us to think about, is Gatsby actually achieving the dream or just chasing something he can never truly reach? Through Nick's perspective, Fitzgerald is letting us see both sides at once, the hopeful version of Gatsby as well as the fragile illusion hiding underneath it, which makes his reinvention so complex. It's not just about throwing parties or wearing nice clothes. It's about trying to build an entirely new life that might not even be possible. And that's why Fitzgerald's use of first-person narration is so powerful here, because he's not just telling us what happened, he's making the reader stop, question, and reflect on what Gatsby's dream really means to them after everything, and reflect on their life as well. That light isn't just about anything as simple as wanting Daisy. It is a direct physical representation of everything Gatsby is chasing: wealth, status, acceptance, and the pursuit of the American dream. By putting it far away and almost unreachable, Fitzgerald makes us think about how some dreams, no matter how much effort you put in, may never be fully reached. Instead of just describing this, he triggers these thoughts in the reader's mind by making them stop and reflect on what he's trying to imply, while connecting this identity to his pursuit of the American dream. It makes the symbolism even more powerful, as that's relatable to millions of people, including readers in similar shoes. For my dramatic reading, I chose the very last page of the novel, page 198, where Nick reflects on Gatsby's dream and the meaning of the green light. This page is so beyond important because it's the final moment of the story, not just plot-wise, but emotionally, and looking into the overall meaning and message-wise too. Instead of some exciting, wholesome ending, we get a quiet reflection, and Fitzgerald uses Nick's voice to explain what Gatsby's life really was standing for the entire time. What makes this page in particular so powerful is that Nick stops talking only about Gatsby and starts talking about everyone. Gatsby thought his future was always ahead of him and something he could reach. But Nick realizes that that dream was gone long ago, and that realization gives the ending a calm, thoughtful meaning for the reader to sit there and reflect on. And as I sat there, brooding on the old, unknown world, I thought of Gatsby's wonder when he first picked out the green light at the end of Daisy's dock. He had come a long way to this blue lawn, and his dreams must have seemed so close that he could hardly fail to grasp it. He did not know that it was already behind him, somewhere back in the vast obscurity beyond the city, where the dark fields of the Republic rolled on under the night. Gatsby believed in the green light, the orgastic future that year by year recedes before us. It eluded us then, but that's no matter. Tomorrow we will run faster, stretch out our arms further. In one fine morning, so we beat on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. When I read this passage, I used a soft and slower tone because Nick isn't reacting to events anymore. He's thinking back on them and trying to understand what they all really meant. I paused slightly after the line, "He did not know that it was already behind him," in order to highlight the moment where the dream is revealed as impossible. That pause lets the idea really sink in for the reader. I also put emphasis on Gatsby believed in the green light, since that line represents Gatsby's hope in everything he was chasing. Then I slowed down the most before the final sentence. "So we be on, boats against the current." Because it's the closing thought of the entire novel, letting a longer pause sit there makes the ending feel more reflective instead of rushed. Reading this in Nick's voice helped me realize that Gatsby's reinvention, like I said, was never just about becoming rich or changing his name. It was about believing the future could erase the past. Fitzgerald ends the novel in this quiet, thoughtful way to show that even when people try to start over, memories and reality will still always follow them. That connects back to the idea of reinvention in the FRQ because Gatsby does create a new identity. But the end shows the limits of that change. Instead of giving us a dramatic conclusion, Fitzgerald leaves us with a reflection that makes the reader think about their own hopes, their own past, and why people keep reaching for something that's just out of reach. So, when we look at this novel as a whole, the biggest takeaway to the reader isn't just Gatsby's ending, it's how Fitzgerald chooses to show it. Through multiple forms of detailed images of the mansion in huge parties, we can see how carefully Gatsby builds this new version of himself for other people to believe. Through Nick's narration, we start to question whether the version of his life will actually ever be strong enough to last. And through the symbolism behind the green light that always seems so close but so far away, Fitzgerald gives us a clear symbol of a dream that will never quite be reachable. All these techniques work together in connecting back to the idea of reinvention in the FRQ. Gatsby really does do everything in his power to try to leave his past behind and create a completely new, reinvented version of himself. But by the end, Fitzgerald shows that changing your name, your money, or even your future will never be able to fully erase where you came from or guarantee you happiness. Society will always try to chase their own version of the green light, believing the next step in life will finally make everything feel complete. But that's what makes this novel so loved and important, because instead of giving us this perfect ending that we all would love, Fitzgerald leaves us all thinking, not just about Gatsby, but about why we all tend to keep trying to start over in the first place. And the realization and deep thought that was created through every use of symbolism, imagery, and narration, and what makes The Great Gatsby more than just a story. And what makes Gatsby's whole reinvention so much more than just a character wanting a different life. Thank you for listening to today's podcast of Abby's Analysis. I'll see you next time.
So we beat on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past.